This episode is for every woman out there, whether you are in your 20s, whether you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond, who has ever hid yourself. For the woman who did not allow herself to be free, to feel fully alive, to feel fully expressed. It's for every woman out there who ever got lost in the roles that we so often play. For every woman who has put on a mask and hid her true self. Who, again, has gotten lost in the role of whether it's mother, daughter, wife, partner, sister, friend, and has completely lost touch with the woman that you're meant to be. Just being a woman, being an individual, being a person where you're just allowed to be yourself. So I was recently journaling, and I thought that it would be very impactful to write or do an episode based on what I wrote in my journal, because I noticed, or I've been thinking about how much grief and sadness I was feeling over the fact that I spent decades of my life being lost in roles. The role of daughter, being a good daughter, the role of being a teacher, student, wife, a mother, mostly mother. I was a stay-at-home mom for 20 some years and completely lost touch with the part of me that felt so free as a child. And I didn't feel free all the time. Let me just first put that out there. There were still times, even as a young child, that I was in this place of reading the temperature of the room, scanning the room, scanning my mom. Is this safe for me to speak up? Is it safe for me to say what I truly think and what I feel? And oftentimes it wasn't. It wasn't. So that was even a pattern that I started to play out at a very, very young age. However, I was able to be my true self and feel completely free and alive whenever I was either playing or I was in nature. Anytime that I was playing in the snow, building snow forts, doing snow angels, jumping in the leaves, riding my bike down the street with my hands off the handlebar and just feeling so free, like free and alive. Or any time that I was spending time on a lake at my aunt's lake house, when I was out on the boat and just feeling so connected to the water, to the sun. There were times I was out on the lake and it was so still in the early morning when the lake just looked like a piece of glass. You could look down and see your reflection. And I just remember that when I used to do that, I felt such stillness deep inside of me. Why did I feel so much stillness? Because I was so present. I was so present with the moment and connected with the oneness of being one with nature, one with the divine source, God energy, whatever you want to call it. And I didn't know what to call it as a kid. I had no idea what I was experiencing. I just knew that I was feeling something that was like so alive inside me. And I cherish that. Like, I really cherish, and I can remember it today as if it was just yesterday, even though it was many years ago. And what I realized is that's my true nature. That is how I felt fully alive. Or even when I was doing cartwheels, or I was doing flips off the monkey bars, and I was dancing around my kitchen, singing and laughing. Those were times when I allowed myself to be fully expressed. However, I don't know if it was just me, or maybe if this happened to you as well, if you can relate. But when I did those things, when I was alive and feeling fully expressed and feeling present in the moment, I was always by myself. I never felt safe or comfortable enough to fully express myself when I was around other people, whether I was at school or I was at home or around family. I never felt fully free or comfortable enough to just express myself. I didn't burst out laughing. I wouldn't laugh. I didn't act silly. I didn't speak up, speak out. Have you ever had like a classmate that was just kind of maybe the class clown, or they had really big personalities and it seemed so natural for them to express themselves in any way that they felt necessary in the moment? And I used to envy that. I really looked at those classmates and said, God, I wish I felt that free to just express whatever came to me. Obviously in the right moment. But I always had this way of holding on tight to myself, being stoic, being contracted, holding everything in, just scanning whether it was even safe for me to say what I was thinking or maybe what I was believing. And I know that as years went on for me growing up, as I became a teenager, I know where it came from, that I really started to censor my thoughts and my beliefs and sharing them, is because if I said something that I believed and my mom disagreed with me, or she didn't like what I had to say, and if it even made her upset, she would come back at me with like, how dare you say that? Like, almost like, what is wrong with you for thinking that way? That's not the right way to think. That's not the right way to be. So I learned that there's right and there's wrong. There's good and there's bad. And if I didn't think the way others thought, I didn't feel what others thought I should feel, or I didn't hold the same beliefs that other people had, that there was something wrong with me if I wasn't congruent with them. And so that's why I started to put the masks on more and more as I continued to get older and grow up. It was always this way of, even with like girlfriends, I would listen to what they were sharing. And if I thought that I might rock the boat by saying what I truly thought, I wouldn't say it. I often just agreed with them. That's classic people pleasing right there. There's such a deep fear of conflict with another, of rocking the boat, that we just often keep our thoughts to ourselves. and we don't speak up and say anything. It's almost as if the fear is so intense that it feels like if I speak up and I say what's truly on my mind and what's true for me, that it's equivalent to being attacked by a big black bear. That's what it feels like at times for someone who struggles with people pleasing. But here's the problem. The more that we silence ourselves, the more we shut ourselves down, the more we tamper, the more we censor, and we don't say what we want to say. We don't share what's truly in our hearts and what's in our minds. If we're not doing that and we make it a habit of suppressing, repressing, and contracting, then we almost become robotic. And we can start to feel really numb to life because you're not fully expressing. You're not allowing yourself to, I was not allowing myself to just be me fully, unapologetically, uncensored. I was constantly censoring what I said and how I felt and what I believed and what I did, all to avoid rejection and ultimately abandonment, because that's what we're most afraid of, is being abandoned by others. But in the wake of doing that, I abandoned myself repeatedly. But every time I said, nope, don't feel that. Nope, don't say that. I wouldn't do that if I were you, because you're going to really piss that person off. Or you're going to really make this person angry. I do it still at times. I'm not going to lie, because again, this is masks off for people pleasers and perfectionists. And by the way, I am Kim Gross, the host. And so I'm not going to pretend that I'm perfect and I get it right all the time, because I don't. There are still times that I fall into the trap and I go down the rabbit hole of playing out these patterns. So at times I will still scan my husband to see whether or not I should speak up about a particular thing, especially if I know where he's going to stand on it or how he's going to react. And if he's going to be upset about it, I will censor whether I say it or not. Now, mind you, there is another thing that's called discernment. And sometimes discernment is helpful. Sometimes it's a matter of timing. Maybe it's not the right time to say something. Maybe there would be a better time to have a conversation about a difficult topic. And sometimes it might just, some things are just better off left unsaid. And I do use discernment at times too, but I just know, I can tell that there are just still times when I'm just too afraid to say what I'm really thinking or feeling, because I don't want the conflict. I don't want to deal or cope with his reactions to me if I speak up and stand my ground. And so that still does happen at times, not always. There are many times if something does feel important enough for me, I will speak up and say something, especially when it came to my kids when they were younger. And if I felt like there was something that he was saying or doing to them that was hurtful, that's when I could actually stand up more, because the mama bear in me came out and I had to protect my baby cubs, and I didn't care. I didn't care at that point if how pissed off he got from what I said. It was like, nope, I can't go quiet on this, because what you're saying right now or what you're doing right now is harmful, and I'm not going to allow that. But I would not always when it came to things that he said to me. And now I've gotten a lot better where I do set some boundaries, and I'll say, you know what, that's really not okay to say that, because that really hurts. And I need to let you know that that is not okay for you to talk to me in that way. But it was a process. I've had to, do so much healing work to get to that point of being able to assert myself.
Hey, it's Kim here, interrupting your regularly scheduled podcast episode to let you know about an opportunity to go deeper into this work. I invite you to head over to Amazon.com and pick up your copy of my book, Free to Be: A Pathway to Inner Liberation. If you are looking to unhook from people pleasing and perfectionistic patterns, if you're looking to have a better way of identifying your patterns and then how you can unhook so you can be free to step outside your comfort zone, free to have more meaningful relationships in your life, free to be your true self without hiding behind a mask any longer. If you desire any of this, then I encourage you to pick up your copy. And if you enjoy my book as much as I loved writing it, please go on over and leave a review on Amazon. You can leave a star review or written review. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcast episode.
And so there's that component of keeping ourselves silent and keeping ourselves quiet. But going back to the other part that I was noticing during my journal entry and what I started to share in the beginning of this episode is that I was feeling so much like sadness and grief. Like I had to grieve. I am grieving all of the years that I played small, that I didn't allow myself to be the full version, to be fully expressed, to feel alive. And I'm feeling it more and more these days. And that's how I can know that there's a difference, right? Because I've done so much inner work and I've been constantly working on healing the wounded parts. I've been working on unhooking from my patterns, taking off my masks, unlayering from all of the shit that I've been dealing with for years. And so I now experience more freedom, more joy. I know what it feels like now to feel more alive. And I'm starting to express myself. So I'll also share with you that recently I've also been doing with some practitioners some somatic healing work. And here's what I will tell you. Okay, so I'm going to share this, full disclosure. A few years back, maybe 4 years ago, I went to a retreat and I wrote about this in my book, Free to Be: A Pathway to Inner Liberation. I went to this retreat. There were 80 people there. And there were so many activities that I was completely uncomfortable with. I will tell you that my anxiety was probably a 12 or 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. So one of the things that they had you do was you had to have a partner and you had to stare into the eyes of this total stranger. So talk about intimacy and vulnerability. That was one thing. Another thing was dancing with a partner. Similar thing where there was actually like these steps where you had to have one lead, one follow, and you had different partners throughout. So that was another uncomfortable experience. But the one that was really, really uncomfortable was when you were partnered up and one partner was a witness while the other partner was having some kind of emotional release, and then you had to switch. The partner that was doing the emotional release, there were many, many participants in the room that were screaming, crying, wailing, beating on the ground, and just really expressing emotion through their bodies. And I'm telling you that it sent me through the roof. I had to leave. I walked out of the room and I left and went back to my cabin. And it really had nothing to do with what the people were doing, because there's no judgment on them. I had judgment at the time, but it was really what I learned in hindsight. It was more about me being very uncomfortable with that amount of vulnerability, that amount of expression was too scary. It was just too scary for me at the time. Fast forward now, I just recently had a couple of experiences with two different practitioners where in the privacy of my own home, I was able to have some emotional release, because I now really understand how much the body does store all of our trauma, all of our pain, all of our wounding. Every time that I censored myself, every time I silenced myself, every time I didn't allow myself to express, all of that got pushed down and stored in my body. All the anxiety, all the fear, all the trauma, it's all in my nervous system. And I know that if I want to truly heal and have the freedom that I speak about so frequently, this is part of my journey. It's not a part of everyone's journey. It doesn't have to be a part of your journey. Everyone can find something different. And maybe this is something that would end up working for you. But nonetheless, again, I go back to, I swear I would have 4 years ago said there's no way that I will ever do that. And lo and behold, as I'm saying, I did. And I cannot even put into words how freeing it feels for me to have let some of that go. I feel like there's more of a bounce in my step. I actually am laughing more. I'm able to dance around more. I'm not taking myself so seriously. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is because I've always taken myself so seriously. Everything's so serious. And as I said earlier in this episode, I envied the people that always seem to be so lighthearted and free and silly. I really wanted to be that way. And so now I'm starting to feel that and having that freedom. The more I take off my masks, the more I'm unhooking from patterns, the more free I'm feeling. And so this is what I desire for you to have in your life as well, is to have this freedom to be your true self. And that's why I said in the very beginning that this video is for every woman out there, whether you are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or beyond. It's so imperative that we remember what it was like to be our true selves, that we come home to our true selves, and to really live life, to really fully live life to the fullest. It's such a cliche, but it's so true. It really is so true. There is just this one life that we have, and it's so important to live life to the fullest, because we are not guaranteed tomorrow. And what I don't want for you and what I don't want for myself is for us to be on our deathbed and having regrets that we didn't live life to the fullest. We didn't live life being fully alive and free. And thus why I said I've been grieving all the years that I didn't feel that way. For most of my life, I didn't have that freedom and I didn't feel fully alive. And it's even more of a desire for me to help the young 20-year-olds, 20 to 30-year-olds who are just kind of at the beginning of their journey to help them become aware of this pattern, to become super focused on how the patterns that we play out are keeping us from being fully alive. I didn't have any clue when I was in my 20s. It wasn't even something that was on my radar that I was living in that way, that I didn't know I was hiding. I didn't know I was suppressing. I didn't know I was censoring. I didn't know I was contracting. I was just doing it, and it felt like it was just who I was. I didn't realize then that it was just a way to cope and deal with life. Maybe part of it was a little bit of my personality, but a lot of it was a way to protect myself. It was a strategy of how I navigated life because it felt too uncomfortable and too unsafe to be fully myself. And because I had no clue, I just kept going throughout the days. And so now if I'm able to take what I know now and help others who are in the beginning of their journey to become aware, it doesn't mean that you won't put on a mask or that you won't have patterns. But if you have the awareness, you can work on it more diligently. You can work on taking off the masks, and you can work on unhooking from the patterns. And if you're listening to this episode and you are in your 40s or 50s and beyond, and you resonate with what I'm saying, like you're feeling it in your bones, you're feeling it in your body, that this is how you have been showing up in your life, that you maybe go to your job and you're feeling like you can't speak up, you can't be fully yourself at your job, it's a dead-end job. Or maybe in your romantic relationship, maybe there's no passion there. Maybe your partner doesn't see you, like truly see you for who you are. Maybe your partner is just, it's so habitual, so routine that your partner just, it's this, oh, hello, how are you in the morning? Or how was your day? And it's just this way of, it's almost like it's transactional. You're not fully seen or deeply seen for who you are. And maybe it's because you're not showing yourself. It may not be your partner's fault for not seeing you. You may not be showing. And most likely, if you're listening to this podcast, most likely you're not even showing or revealing who you truly are. So how are you supposed to be seen? Like deeply the way you desire, if you're not feeling safe to even show that part of you. You're still hiding parts of yourself in your relationships. And then you wonder, why do I feel so discontent in this relationship? And most likely it's because it's just become transactional, or it's one-sided. Maybe it's more about you giving to the other person more than you receive, because again, you have these strong people-pleasing tendencies. So it feels one-sided and you feel drained rather than feeling nourished from the relationships in your life. So this is what I do. This is what I help people with, is to take off the masks. I help people to unhook from these patterns and really become aware of how they're playing them out, and then what's underneath that is fueling the fire, so to speak, to keep you still doing the same old and feeling miserable about it, feeling unfulfilled in your life and in your relationships. And then how can you find more of that freedom to be your true self, to express yourself fully and to feel alive. And so if you are desiring to have that, there are a few things that I can help you with. One is I do have my book that I mentioned already, Free to Be, A Pathway to Inner Liberation, available on Amazon. I also have an online course that's now available. It's brand new. It just came out. That you can find on my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. And if you want to become more aware of your patterns and how they are showing up for you, I have a new session, a one-time session called Illuminating Your Patterns. And that you can access one-on-one with me by you can email me, kim@kimgrosscoaching.com. You can go to my website. You can book a call there. I'll have all these links in the show notes for you as well, so it's easy to find it. And then if you desire even more in-depth one-on-one coaching, then I can take you through my 12-week 5-step power pathway program as well. And that is a deep dive, like where you will really learn how to identify your patterns, how to own it, how to heal what is underneath that's keeping you perpetuating your patterns, how to embrace all the parts of yourself so that you can come into wholeness, because we can't feel fully alive if we're not in wholeness. That's what it's all about, is coming into wholeness more and more. And then how to really strategically take steps to create the life that you desire. So I help guide you through that in my 5-step power pathway, which I take you through in 12 weeks. So there's all of those options. And of course, continue to tune in to Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists as I continue to share more and more here on the podcast. And I'm sure between one of those or all of them, if you desire, that you will be well on your way to having more freedom. Because at the end of the day, you really do deserve it. I'm telling you, I just don't want you to have the regret or feel the grief, to feel the loss of going through your whole life, of not experiencing what it feels like to be fully yourself, to just be you and not be afraid to just be you. I mean, really, if you think about it, and I'll end on this, if you think about it, it really is sad that so many of us go through life that way. It's our birthright to just be our true selves. It is our birthright. And yet so many of us don't allow ourselves. We're too afraid to be our true selves. And so that's what I'm here to help you with. So I will see you next time on Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. I hope you have a great week.
Hey, Kim Gross here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. I invite you to hop on over to my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. Right there on the front page, there's a quiz for people pleasers and perfectionists. You can find out if you have tendencies. You can also get into my newsletter, where you will be given valuable content every week on different topics I share here in the podcast. And if you really did enjoy this episode, if you found it helpful, if you found it valuable, please go to, if you're on YouTube, go and subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, then I invite you to leave a review. You can even do a star review. It doesn't have to be a written review. If you know of someone who can benefit from this podcast or this particular episode, please share it with them. I'll see you next time.